Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. My name is Jim Megann. I'm the interim CEO of eTech Resources, and of course, we're joined by Chris Drysdale, director who has led these webinars in the past. And I just want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us on our Q3 webinar, where we're going to overview what's happened in the quarter, plus give you an opportunity to see where we're headed. But as of course, and I'm not sure who has the slides, but we're going to go to the next slide. Of course, with all presentations, it is important that everyone have a look at our disclaimer and understand the forward-looking statements that we're likely going to be addressing here today in our overview. There's no question about, that eTech, as with all natural resource companies that are listed, we have to follow 43101 standard guidelines, and all the materials that you're going to see and all the information and the data that you see all follow the 43101 standards. However, from time to time, we will be talking about things in the future, and please, please use caution in terms of interpreting what we say about the future, because there's a lot of variability in natural resource exploration, and we want you to understand the risks and the potential rewards, which is why we're doing these sessions. So looking forward to taking you through the opportunity today, and again, glad that you took the time to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about the team, because there's been some changes to the team, and specifically we want to talk about Dr. Francis Wall, who is an absolute phenomenal addition to this company. Want to have a little bit of a look back on Eureka and the timeline of what has occurred, where and how things have moved forward over the past number of years. And Chris is going to take us through some of the more technical things and demonstrate some of the geological characteristics that we have been noticing, and where that is really providing an opportunity for additional exploration potential. And then we're also going to tell you about the XRF, which is a little bit of the high-tech thing that we're bringing to Eureka, and how we're going to be utilizing that, and how it's going to help hopefully identify future opportunities for value creation for our shareholders. So moving forward. This is the new team, and I guess I want to thank everybody, because in the annual general meeting last month, I was elected to the board, and thank you very much. And I have been appointed the interim CEO as part of that. Whoop, we went too far. If we can go back, there you go. And I want to thank everybody for that. But in addition, I'd also like to thank Dan Whitaker. Now, Dan was previously on the board, and he also had the interim CEO role. Dan is very focused on some phenomenal near-term opportunities in Antler. So I have taken the to allow Dan to be able to have that focus. I've stepped in, and from an interim perspective, it's great to work with the team. So Rob Randall, Ken Marshall, John Philpott, and of course Chris Drysdale remain the core members of the board. But in addition, just before the annual general meeting, actually, we added Professor Francis Wall. We want to take a little bit of time to discuss this, and we can go forward to the next slide that talks about Professor Wall. I can't state this enough. I mean, it is a coup for eTech to have attracted Professor Wall to eTech. Professor Wall is a rock star without question in the rare earth industry, and I have a very long list of her accomplishments, which I can't read them all because there's just too many. But she does hold a PhD in mineral chemistry and petrogenesis of the rare earth rich carbonates from the University of London. She's a fellow of the Mineralogical and the Geological Society. She's chair of the British Geological Society Science Advisory Committee. She's a president of the Royal Geological Society of Cornwall, a former president of the Mineralogical Society of Great Britain and Ireland. In 2019, she was awarded the William Smith Medal from the Geological Society of London. And of course, she has been named one of the top 100 inspirational women in mining. She is accomplished on a vast variety of areas related to rare earths, and has been key in terms of working with our team on the ground and providing even greater understanding and governance, particularly as it relates to ESG practices, which she has an absolutely renowned reputation for that as well. So we're going to be able to bring that to our property and our project in at ETEC, and we are just so pleased to welcome Professor Wall to the board. I think all shareholders should take substantial pride in the fact that she chose this board, and I can guarantee you there's not a rare earth listed company anywhere that wouldn't want to have her on their board. So thank you to Professor Wall for joining, and I think if you haven't had the time, do have a look at that and see how. Do have a look at her background, and it is very impressive in what she's bringing to the table. So let's move forward to the next slide. And I do want to talk about all the people that are texting me. No, I do want to talk about the project and where we are. In terms of thinking about this as an opportunity and thinking about where ETEC is and how we've moved forward, I think it's important for us to think about any natural resource exploration as an evolution more than it is an actual activity. And let's just look at how we evolve. You know, in the beginning, and pretty much every project starts with a prospector. And the prospector essentially is, as cliche as it sounds, you kick a stone and you see something that's kind of interesting, and then you have a look at that, you understand it may be mineralized, and immediately theories begin to kind of present themselves and say, well, if this is here, if this mineral is here, potentially it's here because this occurrence, and if that is true, then likely this area here defined by this zone and that zone could potentially be mineralized. So you have a theory initially, but what ends up happening is you learn as you go forward. And it's interesting, our project is called Eureka, but Eureka moments are actually very rare. No play on rare earths there, but they are rare. Your understanding of a property, typically, it goes forward in very small increments. You look at anything from continental to regional geology and understanding how massive structures moved or created opportunities. You look at what happens in your region, and then you look at localized exactly under your feet. What is happening there, and continuously your theory on what you have and how things were created, how they present, and how they may be commercial from your perspective, it evolves over time. And if you want to look at the major things that have evolved with us, the founders of the company from 2016 to 2020, they did an absolutely incredible job. And of course, Ed and Tim and Sean and the main founders that that the company has worked with since the beginning, they did an incredible job of identifying this as an opportunity and seeing, right here, right under our feet, this is what we have. And there's some real strong advantages. They were looking for a deposit that was not necessarily the biggest deposit in the world, not necessarily even the highest grade deposit in the world. But what these people understood was there's going to be a dramatic deficit of rare earths in the coming time. And anyone that's involved in this company and anyone who looks at this as rare earths as a potential mineral industry that they want to be involved with completely understands that. It's the short supply that's going to drive demand. It's going to drive pricing. It's going to drive projects like ours from exploration, hopefully one day into production because of that shortage. And they were looking for a project that was the easiest to extract, the project that could potentially come to market before other projects. As we all know, many of us are invested in rare earth or natural resource properties for a very long time. These projects take a long time. And they were looking for a project that had the opportunity to happen quickly. And they identified Eureka, and they did that work in the early days, and obviously, came together with the group that has now become the public company of ETEC. And to get them started, they put together their 43101, which had a small resource, which is very close to surface, small geographic footprint, but they wanted to prove that the mineralization was in this area, which they did. And they did a great job. And I'm sure everybody has seen that right under our 2020, 2021 timeline. There's your 43101, a 310,000 deposit, which is a very small deposit, but it was really just to prove that there is something quite interesting here. It's definitely mineralized. And they immediately began to do work from a met perspective to prove, is this the type of deposit that we could extract and be able to use this material in the near future, just even as this shortage of rare earths sort of begins to come into the marketplace. So obviously the larger entity and the publicly traded company, came into being about a year ago, just over a year ago, and we brought more significant funds so that a lot more drilling could be done. There was a phase 1 drilling, and then obviously we're just getting our phase 2 results out, which, by the way, our phase 2 diamond drill results were released earlier this morning. So if you haven't had a chance to see that news release, please do look that up. When I talk about evolution, the majority of the work that we did in the last year is really closer to under our feet. What had the founders had proven there's mineralization right there. They had proven that it was open in all directions. And we took that drill and we drilled around that area in zones 1 through 4, which we know now. And we continued to see intercept after intercepts, and significant intercepts in many cases. So we're very excited, about the information that we found. But to be completely frank with you, we think ETech is at a bit of an inflection point right now, or it has the opportunity to have a fairly significant inflection point, but it's not necessarily just about what we found in zones 1 through 4. When you think about that wider learning and how the understanding of the property evolves, we've spent a lot more time now looking in areas that weren't just under our feet. We're looking at the whole entirety of the property that we have, and we begin to, and I'm going to do this. Chris is going to take you through this now. He's going to show you what we found, and it's going to be more technical. But from my perspective, I'll be just slightly less technical, and we're going to draw an analogy of the duck. And we've all heard, if it walks like a duck, if it looks like a duck, and if it quacks like a duck, it might be a duck. And we've essentially taken that approach in a much more technical way, and we've applied it to the Eureka property. So we went back to the beginning, and we said, okay, when those prospectors and the founders first found this, what did they find? What did they see? What were the things that said we should actually drill here? It took a big risk of drilling at a very small area because it either had to work or not work. So we wanted to know what were the indicators that they have. So we began looking at those indicators and trying to interpret them within the scope of that wider range, the entire property, and even the geology and the region beyond our property, and understanding all the things that we have learned over the past year, everything from the drilling to all the trenching that we've done, to the IP and the radiometrics that we've done, and try to identify what are the areas that we can say, or what are the attributes that look like a duck. What caused us to first say that this is a great area, and really, is there more of it? So Chris is going to take you through that now. We can go to the next slide. And Chris is going to talk to you about these pathfinders, because that's essentially what that is. And it's a technique that's used in natural resources all the time. And Chris is going to talk about the pathfinders that we have focused on, and where it is taking us in the future. So Chris, that's you.
Thanks, Jim. And yeah, it's nice to talk to everyone again. Obviously, I gave the last update, and at that update, we said that we are now starting to use Jim's phrase, starting to look up from our feet and look on the horizon. And everything that we had done up to date is we had regressed it and put it back to an original thought. And we spoke to the original founders, Ed, Sam, Sean, and Tim Smalley, and they gave us the way they were thinking. And the way they were thinking was, instead of looking for a geologically complex area, let's look for a product that we can win and sell. Once we find that, we then work backwards. So we did the same. We said, let's look at what we know we have. We know we have 310,000 tons in zones 1 to 3. we're going to conduct exploration over that area and see how that presents. Once we completed that, we started noticing that we needed 4 characteristics, geological characteristics, that needed to line up in order for us to viably draw a circle around a target and say, that's something we want to go to. So the initial drilling that we've just completed and the results that we've announced today on zone 1 through to 3 was designed to confirm not only the extent of the deposit, but also to understand the complexity and interpret these carbonatite intrusions. Furthermore to that, what that allowed us to do is build a holistic understanding with regards to our regolith cover. We don't have much outcrop where we are exploring, so we can't just walk up to rocks, and also understand the depth of our weathering. And the results from the drilling, not only the intersects, but from a technical standpoint, have definitely exceeded our expectations. And even better than that, it's allowed us to define favorable deposit characteristics. And what we did was we looked at 4 characteristics. We know that our monazite is associated with thorium. That has a radioactive signature. Secondly, we know that nothing beats boots on the ground. Thirdly, we also understand that we need structural areas of complexity, sources, pathways, traps, in essence, the plumbing for these magmatic, highly viscosity fluids to move up. And then we need a magnetic signature, and that allows us, in essence, to look underneath the cover that we have. And we applied those 4 characteristics over the area that we know, and they lit up. They lit up, and we said, right, we're on the right path. Now we knew if these 4 characteristics are highlighting the areas that we know, then we can apply it to the rest of the license. Now, we're not saying our entire license is going to be extremely prospective, but we do know that we have a significant chunk of our license that has the correct geological environment for this deposition. And the importance of these large monazite crystals and the simple mineralogy goes back to what Jim was mentioning, is it positions Eureka as one of the world's most unique rare earth deposits, in the fact that our early indications are saying we've got a winnable product. We've got a product that can be sold to anyone. And we're working with the Saskatchewan Research Council and our other partners to look at low-cost opportunities in the near future. So this drove our exploration from June. And in June this year, for those of you that were on the call, we spoke about the fact that to date we had only explored just over 2% of our license. And I must commend the field team that we have here, our Namibian technical team and our Namibian field team. They've worked tirelessly over the last 3 months since June, and we've explored almost 72+% of our license. We conducted a radiometric survey, over 1,200 kilometers of radiometrics on a 4-wheel motorcycle. We conducted a widespread magnetic survey, over 1,000 line kilometers, walked by foot. And at the same time, our guys in the field, our team in the field, conducted a mapping program. And they've individually mapped over 11,000 points. And you can speak to any explorer, nothing beats boots on the ground for exploration. And right now, the map on the right-hand side, that's the amount of exploration that we've conducted. On the backdrop, you have a radiometric backdrop, which is a thorium filter that we use. And those individual triangles that you see there are lithologies that we are targeting. Those are...
Sorry, I think one of the things that we want to be emphasizing at this stage too is that what your team did in all of the widespread geological activities, from the radiometrics to the magnetics and all the mapping area, is, again, this is the duck analogy. What did we find in zones 1 through 3, and where do we find them elsewhere, right?
Exactly, and that's the one thing that we focused on with the guys, is we said to them, obviously here's zones 1, if you can see my laser, here's zones 1 through to 3. We can see that we have lithologies of interest dotted all the way through that. And we spent a lot of time as a team mapping through there, seeing what lithologies we're seeing, looking at the core, understanding what lithologies we're seeing underneath it. And the drilling results released last week and today are a timely reminder again of the potential of what we have at the Eureka project. And not only that, the significant opportunity we have in our seriously underexplored areas, not only on our license, but in the region. And to have completed this in the last 3 months is fantastic from the team. We really stood on them. But this work further confirmed to us as a management team that this Eureka project has genuine scale potential and growth potential. And what's happened now is, from this, as Jim likes to say, if it looks like a duck or walks like a duck, it potentially is a duck. We have identified
a lot of
ducks, and we are excited about them. We definitely understand that they are currently targets. They're not all going to be mineralized. They're not all going to carry deposition, but the few that we have arrived at definitely are showing extreme promise. We're still conducting this widespread geological mapping, and at the same time, we're conducting infill on areas that we feel have other potential opportunities or need further understanding. And on the left-hand side, you can see a handheld scintillometer radii that's giving a reading of 645 counts per second. That is a radioactive reading. To give you a comparison, when we first visited the site with the founders in 2018, and we went into zone 1, which had a large trench open at that site, these are the type of numbers that we were picking up while walking along those trenches. So we've got further confirmation in actual numbers that are saying there is something here. We're going to continue doing this.
For those of you that are currently taking your finger and pointing it at the screen, there are 17 of those areas on the map that Chris is currently showing that hold similar pathfinders to what we've found in zones 1 through 3. So 17 more ducks.
And we're going to continue doing this with the view to identifying more of these. You can see there's a large open area down in the south. We haven't been there, and the field team is going to start looking at areas down there as well as we start to grow the opportunity. I rushed back to Halifax and met with the board a couple weeks ago on Zoom, and we've confirmed the technical team would really like to be drill testing these targets in the near future, and I think we can look forward to that. Not only that, we've committed and we've purchased a portable XRF gun. So since COVID-19, and one of the delays that has come from COVID-19 is the lack of flights that are flying between places like Namibia and places like Canada or Australia. So our assay turnaround time was taking up to 16 weeks. That, coupled with the fact that assaying wet chemistry for rare earth elements is an extremely costly undertaking, we were always looking at ways to not sample only what needs to be sampled so that we don't overspend money, but also B, try rush samples so that we're not drilling or exploring blind without results. And that led us to acquire a portable XRF in August of this year. And what this portable XRF will allow us to do is conduct a live analysis of samples in the field. And not only that, it will allow us to go back to some of our historical sampling and allow us to build further continuous elemental composition data. And the more data we have, the clever geos that are in our team, I'm not one of them, will definitely open up more areas. And there's a massive cost reduction with the XRF because we are going to be blitzing it with the XRF and we'll get indicative numbers. And with those numbers, we have a high confidence level to spend the significant capital required to get the wet assays completed. And we are then happy to wait 12 to 16 weeks because we have preliminary numbers that we can plan and start working on.
I think just to add a little bit on the XRF to make sure that people understand. I mean, the XRF has a very, very narrow point of which it sends a beam into the material, and based on how that beam comes back, you're able to get a sense of what the mineralization is, and if there is mineralization there that you're looking for, and what the grade is. It doesn't work on every mineral, but it will work in the areas that we're looking. But the issue is that it tells you that one very, very small spot. I believe, Chris, the range is only about 0.5 millimeter, right?
Yeah, it's tiny. I don't know the exact numbers.
So if you move over just a little bit, you're going to get a different number. So this is not actually giving us assay results. What it really is a very, very, very strong indicator. And it allows the team, as Chris says, it allows them to get immediate feedback, not 16-week feedback, and sort of say, are you in the right area or you're not in the right area? And it allows us to make quick calls and judgments. And as we talked about the evolution of how you determine what's going on in your property, it gives us feedback and allows that cycle of the evolution to close itself as a loop much, much quicker so that we can move the project forward an awful lot quicker. So when you think about those 17 zones in the previous slide that have been identified as holding similar pathfinders as what we had in zones 1 through 3, the XRF can be used on site on the day to get immediate feedback, to give us at least an indication, is this something that should have extra follow-up, or is this something that we should move on from? So it's going to be, I think, a very substantial tool in terms of helping us advance this property, you know, in the very near term.
Yes, and I want to draw your attention to two great pictures here. On the top, we've got a picture of our core that we drilled in our last phase 2. I think that hole is actually ED28. And what you can see there in the circle is rare earth-bearing monazite crystals. And in essence, that's what we're looking for. And the size of it is unbelievable. And there's a lot of positives that we saw. That's fresh rock. At the bottom here, you can see a visible monazite crystal. It's weathered. Monazite is extremely hardy, so it's got some discoloration. But that monazite crystal is from a grab sample from one of the 17 targets that we've identified. So we've in essence picked up visible mineralization. The XRF is going to allow us to start analyzing those samples as well as historical samples to understand A, is that monazite rare earth bearing? And B, are there areas where potentially we have missed sampling due to it not being as visible or a lack of indicators at that time? So it's really a game changer in what we're doing. And I know the technical team is extremely excited to have that live data in the field. So what we have been able to do, and to date, just to remind everyone, you know, we've done 8,000 meters of diamond core drilling in zones 1, 2, 3. We've done 6,000 meters of reverse circular drilling. And we've done over 10 kilometers of trenching. We've just completed a 1,000+ kilometer radiometric survey. We've completed 1,000+ kilometer magnetic survey. We continue to do detailed geomapping. We also continue to do rock sampling, grab sampling as we are doing that mapping. And in the background, together with partners, we're busy conducting mineralogical studies to further understand the beneficiation routes of our target minerals. We've lined up a lot to happen over the next couple of months, and I'm extremely excited to where the company is. We've been able to establish the deposit characteristics. We continue to identify new drill targets. We continue to ground-proof these drill targets, and they continue to stack up. And at the same time, more targets, as our understanding grows, continues to be found and presenting themselves. We are also revisiting all our historical RC and diamond samples, diamond drilling samples, to start seeing if there are areas that we potentially missed in the sampling going down hole. And we're going to specifically, I've lost my point here, sorry. So we're specifically focusing on areas where we think that we've left stuff in the hole. And that's easy to happen. As you can see, we've got one of the geos in the left-hand corner looking through chips there. Those chips are tiny, small chips. And after a couple of months of drilling and long days in 40-degree heat, it's easy for someone to miss areas or potentially miss samples. The XRF is definitely going to allow us to identify these areas very quickly.
Exactly. And I think that to date, one of the things, and again, this comes to the evolution of how you interpret the property. In the beginning, if we didn't see a monazite crystal, we didn't sample it and we didn't assay it. And we now have some indicators that suggest that there may be some additional rare earths there, but we don't know that. But the XRF is going to help us to identify that. And you know, like it will add yet again to the inflection, because that is a circular thing, right? Every time you learn something, we do have to go back to the beginning and add that new learning to your understanding. And the XRF is going to allow us to have a much deeper understanding, not only going forward in those 17 areas. So every time we do something in one of those areas, we're going to be able to check with the XRF immediately, you know, is this mineralized, or does the part we're looking at it seem mineralized, and we'll get feedback immediately. But we're, as Chris is saying, we're also going to be able to go back to everything that's been done to date and also see, is there any more that we can elevate out of what we've already found? You know, that being said, this property still continues to demonstrate itself with such large crystals as we saw in the previous slide. You know, it does present itself as what appears to be lots more work to do, but it appears to be a deposit that is, as we say, it's very winnable. The ability to extract, and in all rare earths, many of us on this call, I'm sure, have invested in natural resources time and time again. And rare earths are not as straightforward as a number of other deposits. You know, it's not like, okay, it's gold, and you know, once we have gold, we know that whether we do this process, or this process, we should be able to extract, you know, 90% of the gold out. Rare earths are much more challenging. They're much more complex. They typically have very, you know, complicated processes of how to extract the rare earths. The reason why the founders were drawn to Eureka is because of the size of those monazite crystals, because of how it presents. It appears that we should be able to get that to the point of commercialization sooner than many other deposits. And that's a very key attribute of Eureka. And, you know, we continue to see that. And now what we're very, you know, encouraged with is those Pathfinders having identified so many additional areas. And we're just chuffed to be able to get out there and to use the XRF and hopefully some new drilling, which we expect to announce in the near future, you know, to determine how many or are any of those new 17 targets. Are they also mineralized, and then can they add to the opportunity that has already been identified in zones 1 through 3?
And not only that, and in closing from my point, you know, with this early exploration that we've been able to conduct since June, coupled together with the exploration that we've seen in Zone 1 through to 4 and the drilling that we've completed there, the Eureka project is starting definitely to present itself as a regional project with massive scale potential. And that's exciting. You know, Eureka was always deemed as the project that had the most easily winnable material, but was small at 310,000 tons. I think our technical team and everyone that has been involved has always from the beginning and now definitely believes that this has got scalability and regional potential. And that's an exciting thing. And what's nice is seeing young geologists working together with, you know, extremely well-established geologists and some leaders in the rare earth industry like Pete, Siegfried, Ed Lois, Sam, Broom-Friendly, and Professor Francis Wall, and build up an understanding for a commodity that is relatively misunderstood, but is definitely a commodity that we're going to need moving into the future. So definitely from a technical standpoint, one of the most exciting projects I've been involved in.
Right. Thanks, Chris. We can move on to the next slide. I just want to remind anyone, this is sort of the end of our presentation, to be honest with you. We'll just take another couple minutes. But while we're doing that, just encourage anyone that has any questions at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to access the chat. And in the chat, you can type a question. There's just a couple of there right now, which I'll start with. Just before I start with that, obviously, I'm sure everyone is aware we're still 100% equity. We have no debt in the company, listed obviously on the TSXV, but we also have a co-listing on Frankfurt. Our outstanding shares are there. Our cash position as of the end of June, our last reporting date, was approximately $1.2 million. So we've got gas in the tank here, and we're certainly really looking forward to getting into some of these new areas and not just continue to do more ground proofing as we are, but also to see you know what those grades look like on an XRF, and are those targets ready for drilling. So the first question that we have is, when do you think the next drilling campaign will take place? I think it's probably reasonable, Chris, that we could say that we expect to have an announcement in the very near future about the drilling. You know, the team has done, and this is a great team. And I did go on about you know, Dr. Francis Wall, but which is absolutely true, and the entire team is just so thrilled to have her there. But we've got some pretty impressive people on the ground. Tim Smalley, Tolene Kruger, you know, some great individuals that are helping to drive to drive this program, and we just want to get out there and get onto that. So I expect you'll hear us announcing in the reasonably near future that we're going to feel confident enough to begin a new drill program to begin to test some of these targets. We have another question that has just been asked, which is, how long will the cash support the planned drilling and expenses? I think it's fair to say that you know, we would, as is pretty typical, we want to get out there, begin to test a number of these targets, and we feel that we have more than adequate treasury to be able to get out there and get that done. But that evolution of learning and assessing before you continue is I think what needs to happen. So we feel that we're adequately funded, and we will get out there. We will test a number of these targets. We'll determine what that feedback is. We're encouraged that it'll look good, but we really need to get out there and get that done, which we think is going to happen it's going to commence this month, and then we'll get back to everybody, and we'll certainly let them know, you know, what kind of results we're seeing, how we're encouraged by it, and what we think the next what the next activity would be, and whether or not we have sufficient funds for that, or whether or not we would be going back to the market. But you know, I mean, as an exploration company, we will be going back to the market. There's no question about that. We don't have sources of revenue. We have phenomenal abilities to spend money, you know, and hopefully to get back the kind of results that we're looking for. But as I said, we think we're at an inflection point.
Can I add there, Jim? Also, you know, We are in Namibia. We are linked to Namibian dollars, linked to the South African rand, and we get a lot of work done here for the power of one Canadian dollar. So we've got a lot of runway here compared to what the similar expenditure would get you in places in North America or Europe. So yeah, we're on a good runway.
And Chris, who's on the ground, obviously, and has boots on the ground for us. I mean, Chris he's been a great in terms of assisting us to be able to to get phenomenal deals, and he's gotten absolute tremendous value on a lot of the drilling and any of our data gathering. Has just had a whole bunch of a really great, good value. So I think we're going to be able to deliver quite a bit for what we have in the treasury. I'm just checking again now, Chris. Is there anything else that you want to add? And I'll check and see if there's any additional questions before we sign off.
No, I'm all good from my side. Thanks very much.
Okay, I think that's it for us. Listen, I have looked at a number of the people that have signed on. I think I know many people on a first name basis. So anyone who's here, if you have any additional questions that come up now or later, please reach out to us and call. Reach out on our email or our social media channels, as you can see them all there. Please follow the things that we're doing if you have a chance. Let other people know about it. We think we've got something that's really, really interesting here. And certainly, as I keep saying the word inflection, because I think over the next reasonably short period of time, we may kind of transform a bit what this project is. From zones 1 to 3, we could end up with quite a bit more, quite a bit more property that's interesting and that potentially may drive some significant value for our shareholders. So, if anyone has any additional questions, contact myself, contact Chris, or just get us on our social media channels, and we will get back to you, and we'll answer the questions or provide whatever feedback you're interested in. So from my perspective, I just want to say thank you for everyone that's attended, and looking forward to next quarter, but also looking forward to getting a whole bunch of news out to you, in that quarter, so there's even more for us to talk about in Q4.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks all.